Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ignorant Intellectual on Media. Today, we need to do a mixed haul. Um, excuse a bit of gruffness in my voice. Got a bit of a sore throat. I've been collecting a bunch of stuff over the last couple of weeks, and it's starting to pile up. So, I figure I better do a mixed haul because I've got stuff from thrift stores and from the used record store that I like to go to, and some private sales and stuff. So figure I better get through this before the pile just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. All right. So there's a bunch of books. I didn't count all the books in the films, so we'll just get through it and we'll see everything that I have. All right. Okay. So the first thing is a Joseph Conrad book. It's called The Secret Agent. All right. This was published in 1907. It's part of the Modern Library 100 Best Novels. So the Modern Library has published a lot of books since the turn of the last century. Um, and out of all the books that they've published, um, they did a top 100 list of it, and this ends up being number 46 of those top 100. And it's basically a spy story. Um, the Secret Agent is an astonishing book. Set in late 19th century London, Joseph Conrad's intense political thriller anticipates the espionage novels of such writers as Graham Greene and John le Carre. It concerns a double agent who is charged with provoking the radical group he has infiltrated into an act of sabotage that will bring about its own destruction. In a marvelous, drawn underworld of political and criminal intrigue, Conrad brilliantly explores the confused motives that lie at the heart of terrorism. And it goes on from there. So basically, it's basically a book on spies taking place in London, right? So it's one of his better books. His best book is probably the one that Apocalypse Now is based on. What was the name of that novel? I can't remember. I'll put it here. I'll put a picture of it up here. Um, that's probably his best novel, but this one isn't bad at all. All right. So next up is Tess of the Dubervilles by Thomas Hardy. It was published in 1892, and this is the Oxford University Press version. The Oxford World Classics. All right. Um, this is the second last version of the Oxford World Classics. This is what they look like. This is the latest version. All right. So they're a little bit different. All right. But they all brown over time. And if you don't protect them, they get, you know, if you notice, see how the browning of them. All these, the penguins, these penguins and all these paperbacks, they use cheap paper stock, so it browns over time. Anyway, so this book is one of the great 19th century like novels. All right, and concerns a woman named Tess. All right, and basically her life. So um, it's got that 1900s feel. These stories are all always around romance and shit happening to families and how they try to survive it because there's not any social safety net back in the 1900s, right? Anyway, so um, it's one of the better ones, and if you haven't read it, I would suggest you do. It's a good one. It's up there with all the Jane Austen stuff and that kind of thing. So, all right, so that's Tess of the Dubervilles. Now we got the picture of Dorian Gray, both in the Penguin Classic and the Oxford World Classic, the newest edition. You go, Scott, why would you get two of them, right? So the reason why I got both of them is because I'm going to sell them, right? So pick them up for a couple of dollars, sell them for a bit more, and that funds my ability to buy films that might be out of my price range or wouldn't be able to purchase because I don't have the budget for, right? So the Picture of Dorian Gray is Oscar Wilde's only novel, and it was put out in 1891. and it tells the story of Dorian Gray, who does not want to grow old, so he sells his soul to the devil to stay young and to live forever. And what happens is a picture that his friend, a portrait painting of his friend, a portrait painting done by his friend of himself is the one that grows old, and then it goes from there. And he lives a life of debauchery, low moral standards and everything. Anyways, it was a big shit show back in the day when it was first published. And, anyway, so it's kind of tame now, but back when it was published, it was pretty much pretty radical book, right? So I would suggest you read it. Oscar Wilde, any of Oscar Wilde stuff is really great, and that's probably the pinnacle of all the stuff that he's written, right? So, all right, next up after that is Metamorphosis by Ovid. Basically, it's another Oxford World Classic. All right, so these are I picked these up because even if I haven't read it, I can read it, and if I have read it, I can resell it for these are very popular books. These and the Penguins classics are very popular to resell, right? So students use them a lot for university courses and college courses, right? And students are always looking for a bargain. You pay full price. Let's say you pay $15 for this, but if you can get it for cheaper, you get off me for like half that, and I can find it for $1 and get it to you for like $6, $7, $8. You're saving half than you would if you went to the university bookstore and paid like 15 for it, right? So everybody benefits, and I get a little bit of money that I can, buy movies to add to my collection or whatever, right? So okay, so this is basically a Latin poem, all right? The theme of metamorphosis is change and transformation as illustrated in Greco-Roman myth and legend. On this ostensibly unifying thread, Ovid strings together a vast and kaleidoscopic sequence of brilliant narratives in which the often paradoxical and always arbitrary fates of his human and divine characters reflect the never-ending flux and reflux of the universe itself. So there's basically three poets or three writers back, in the early Roman days, where everybody wrote in Latin. Ovid was one, and these stickers. Virgil was the other, and Horace was the other. So if you want to go back into, um, the early centuries, the first century, second century, third century, those that time where the Roman Empire was huge or whatever. The three main writers in that period that you'll usually study are Ovid, Horace, and what's the other guy? The guy that wrote I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget. Virgil. Virgil. The How do you pronounce that? Anyways, his book is this one, the Aeneid. Anyways, ignorant intellectual. I read the book. I don't know how to pronounce the name of the book, right? So, all right. And this is Ovid's main piece of literature as well. So, if you want to ancient Rome, that's the stuff you read. All right. So next up is Tristram Shandy, or basically the life and opinion of Tristram Shandy, gentleman. All right. It's a Penguin classic. Another reason why I picked it up. This was published in 1761, so it's an 18th century novel. It basically tells about Shandy and his life. Um, it's good. It's typical of that century's literature, and it's a Penguin classic, and you can never go wrong with Penguin classics. All right, so that's that one. Here's one of my favorite novels. We get more into the modern novel. All right, here's Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. It basically tells the story of a guy named Montag who's a fireman, but firemen in this dystopian world start fires. They don't put them out. They're actually the arm of the law. Where book banning, people aren't allowed to read books anymore, and anybody that houses or holds on to books is a criminal and illegal. And this guy comes and takes your books away, burns them, and burns your house down at the same time. Anyways, it's a pretty awesome novel. It's pretty frightening when you think about it, right? It probably changed more minds than any politician talking about book banning or whatever, because a section of this book is about people who change their name to the name of a book, and then It's their job. It's their job to memorize a book, and that's what their name will be. So maybe like The Old Curiosity Shop by Charles Dickens, and that's my name. My name might be Curiosity, all right, and the book that I memorized is that book, and then I will tell you that story verbally because I can't write it down on a piece of paper because that's illegal. It's a very interesting, thought-provoking science fiction novel. All right. So that's Fahrenheit 451. Fahrenheit 451 is basically the heat, you know, the scale of Fahrenheit that paper burns, right? So, okay. So next up is Catcher in the Rye. It's one of the great novels that when I was growing up, uh, brought into a lot of schools. It's basically, the poster child for teen angst, and it talks about a guy named Holden Caulfield and his life and how he thinks everything is corrupt and adults are corrupt and everything is corrupt. It's an interesting story. I don't know. People uh, put more praise on this novel than I think it deserves, but you know, you read it and you tell me. All right. So Catcher in the Rye. Next up is The Pearl, which was written in 1947, and this is an extremely interesting book. All right. So this is done by John Steinbeck. This book is about a guy who runs into some financial troubles because of a sickness in the family. Like I think his son needs an operation or um, becomes ill, so he goes diving for pearls and he finds the biggest pearl he ever found or anybody else has ever seen in their life. And what he's going to do is he's going to sell it in order to get the money for his medical care of his son. But then everybody knows that he has um, this pearl, and this pearl is really valuable. So, he has to keep putting up with people breaking into his house, trying to steal it, attacking him and his family. And it's basically um, how precious things are not worth, the money that you can sell them for, right? It just brings a headache or even worse into your family, right? So anything of worth that's precious and really expensive, it's like your whole life will end up starting to be obsessed by that or surrounded by that on you trying to protect it, right? And the more that you protect it, the less you can enjoy it, right? So let's an example might be like a really rare baseball card, right? Like a Honus Wagner T206 card in really good shape. It's worth like in the millions, right? And if you have that card, can you display it so that you can see it like you would with other baseball cards that you like, right? You want to maybe hang it on the wall, put it in a display cabinet somewhere where you can see it and enjoy the card. But if you do that, you're basically becoming a target for thieves. They'll break into your house and take it because they'll resell it on the black market to earn money. So you just are making yourself a target. If you have a large diamond, you're a diamond collector or whatever anything like that, you end up becoming a target. So what do you got to do? You got to protect it, right? So maybe what you do is uh, you get a safety deposit box in the bank and you put it in a safety deposit box in the bank, right? And then you never get to see it, right? So then what's the point of having it, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? So a lot of these precious things that people find that, they part of their private collection, but then they got to spend you know, uh, large sums of money protecting it from being stolen, right? You know what I mean? So it's like your life revolves around these objects, right? So it's basically like a life lesson of is it really worth it? That kind of thing, right? So maybe the best place for these objects are in museums, right? And if somebody steals it to put in their private collection, from a museum, then they're going to get targeted by other thieves, right? Anyway, so that's what the pearl is about. Okay, it's how having something that's rare and worth a lot of money may not be worth it in your life, right? Okay, so that's the pearl by John Steinbeck. Extremely interesting read, and it's not a very long read either. If you prefer short reads, all right. So speaking of ancient literature, as I did before, here's the the Odyssey and the Iliad from Homer en français. All right, so I sell I sell books in both languages, in English and in French. And these are two of the more popular for students. Again, students are the ones that buy most of the books that I sell, and they're in French. Basically, it's um, Homer's two long poems, epic long poems. One, tells about the Trojan War, um, with Achilles and all that, right? You've probably seen Troy, stars Brad Pitt. That story comes from Homer, right? So, and then you have the Odyssey. So the Iliad is about the Trojan War. The Odyssey is about Odysseus, who fought in the Trojan War, and after the Trojan War finished, he travels back to Ithaca, where he's the king, right? I think it's called Ithaca, right? So, and it's his journey back to his wife. His 20-year journey. It took him more than 20 years to get back to his wife because he pissed off a god, and the god decided to, you know, um, make his life a living hell. Let's put it that way. Anyways, it's two of the earliest uh, books in the Western canon and Western literature. Usually, when you start reading literature, you will start with the Iliad and the Odyssey from Homer because it's like one of the early books ever written. Okay, so those are the Iliad and the Odyssey. I suggest you read them if you haven't read them. Get a idea of what ancient literature was like, and it's mostly poetry written back then. But when you translate it, translates mostly into prose, right? So it's kind of like you're reading a story rather than a poem, right? All right. Okay, so that's the Odyssey. Uh, Next up is the collected poems of Emily Dickinson. Obviously, Emily Dickinson is one of the great poets. I'm not a huge poet writer. I prefer my poetry in song version, so I can listen to a song and hear music at the same time. Actually, sitting down and just opening up a book and reading poetry. I've tried it numerous times throughout my life, but I've never really gotten into it. So, but she's one of the better ones. I have not read her stuff, but everybody who has read her stuff is quite impressed by it. So, if you like poetry, Emily Dickinson will probably be somebody that you come across. All right. And this book here basically has all her best stuff in it. All right. So I'm just going to resell that. Right. Uh, Next up is one of the great sci-fi novels of all time, like Fahrenheit 451. We have another one called The Chrysalids. This is from John Wyndham. He's an English writer. All right, and this came out. When was this out? Doesn't really matter. 1955. All right, so this was written in 1955, and this is basically a dystopian novel about a world where eugenics has taken over because there was a nuclear holocaust and people survived, and now they're progressing again, and they believe that the Holocaust was God's judgment on people, and so they want to live a pure life. They want to live they don't put up with any variations or mutations or whatever. So if you get a mutation, you end up being banished, sterilized, or killed because they want to keep everything pure or whatever. Right? Anyways, it's a story on eugenics, and I think personally, I think it's his best novel, even though it's not. I don't know if you can really consider it a science fiction novel. It seems more like a dystopian novel, right? But anyway, so if you haven't read The Chrysalids, he's a guy that maybe you should pick up and read, especially if you like dystopian fiction, right? So right, so that's The Chrysalids by John Wyndham. Next up is Coriolanus. It's one of Shakespeare's play. I have not read this. I'm pretty knowledgeable. I picked it up obviously because it's an Oxford World Classic again, right? Um, uh, I'm pretty knowledgeable about Shakespeare's main tragedies and most of his comedies. Um, but this one I have not read, so I'm not sure exactly um, what this one is about. All right. So next up is the basic political writings of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Him, along with like John Locke or Thomas Hobbes. These are the guys that you want to read if you like political philosophy. This one has his discourse on the science and arts, discourse on the origin of inequality, discourse on political economy, which is the one that I would most enjoy reading. And the second one also is on the social contract. So basically, You have Rousseau, you have Locke, you have Hobbes, and you have a few other um, political philosophy writers that you want to read. And it talks about what is the best form of society, what's the best form of government. Is monarchy better than a democracy? Is an autocracy better than a democracy? Should you have a military leader leading your country, et cetera, et cetera? It goes through all of that. So if you enjoy that type of writing, you'll really enjoy Jean-Jacques Rousseau. All right. So that's Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Next up is a book I picked up because in the future I'm going to do a book versus movie um, comparison, and it's Felicia's Journey. It's written by William Trevor, and it's basically I've seen the movie, and the movie is extremely good. It's directed by my favorite Canadian director, who's Adam McGoyan. He's done some really good movies. My all-time favorite Canadian movie was done by him. It's called Exotica. But Felicia's Journey is really good as well. I have not read the book, but I have seen the movie, and the movie is really good. All right, so I'll read the book and then I'll do a comparison of the two. Basically, the story is about a girl who leaves Ireland because she's pregnant to go find her boyfriend who found work in England, or at least he said he found work in England. And on her journey into England looking for him, she ends up coming across an older man who's very nice to her because she's like her parents find out that she's pregnant. And it's out of wedlock, and so they kind of disown her, right? So she's kind of got nowhere to go, and so um, the guy who plays the older man to help her, his name is Bob Hoskins, and he's basically a serial killer and kills women, right? So that's the intrigue of the movie, right? And the book kind of follows that, seems to, when you read the description on the back of the book, all right? So it might be an interesting read as well. Maybe the book will stand up to the film because the film is extremely good. All right. So now I think that's all the books. Okay, so let's do some movies. All right. I found this movie. All right, The Day the Earth Stood Still, the original. All right, with that guy coming down to Earth and the whole the life of the planet is in jeopardy because of the visitors, right? So um, I have this on a DVD already. So when I found this in my favorite used record store for a reasonable price, I picked it up so I can combine the two again, and then I'll have the Blu-ray and the DVD. All right. Next up is Maggie Cheung in Center Stage, which is a film by Stanley Kwan. All right. And I don't know much about this, but I did some research on Kwan, and Kwan seems to be one of the uh, seems to be highly regarded. So I figure maybe I probably like this. But basically, on the back it says Maggie Cheung embodies tragic silent screen siren Ruhan Lingyu, known as the Greta Garbo of China. In this unconventional biopic by Hong Kong New Wave master Stanley Kwan, praised for her moving and emotive on-screen presence, Ruan's private life, which was frequent fodder for the vicious Shanghai tabloids, began to mirror the melodramas which brought her fame, culminating in her suicide at the age of 24. Kwan and Chung paint a kaleidoscopic yet intimate portrait of the ill-fated actress, deftly blending lush period drama, archival footage, and metatextual documentary sequences of Chung reflecting on Ruan's lasting legacy. All right, so it's sounds interesting to me. All right, and but my attraction was Stanley Kwan was the one that directed it. All right, so I'm gonna watch it, see how good it is. All right, so then at a private sale, I found three um, three Blu-rays: Cat People, Fright Night, and Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell. So two from Scream Factory. These two are from Scream Factory, and this one is from Eureka, but it's not one of their Masters of Cinema. It's just one of their basic releases. All right. So Fright Night, if you don't know about it, if you like vampire movies, you really need to watch this movie. It's got a bit of comedy and a bunch of vampires, and I don't know how to describe it. It's just got that charm that most horror films don't have, right? Um, so um, the '80s were a good time for horror, even if you go out of the slasher scene, and you go into vampires, or you go into like werewolves with the American Werewolf in London, which is another great film from this time period. So they had their finger on something in the 80s when it came to horror, and this is one of the outstanding ones. That, and like I said, an American Werewolf in London. So it's a really good film. Um, Frankenstein and the Master from Hell. This is a Hammer film. It's the last. I think Hammer did six. Don't quote me on it, but I think there was six Frankenstein films they did. Hammer did, and this is the sixth one, right? Which is the last of the Frankenstein films. And you know, Peter Cushing is in this, if I remember correctly. Yeah, Peter Cushing, Shane Bryant, all right, and directed by Terence Fisher. So I haven't seen it, but I will in the future. All right. And last, this is a film I saw when I was in my teen years. All right, this film and another film I saw on First Choice or Super Channel back when they had the pay stations and the higher cable. If you lived in Canada, in the higher cable packages, you could get a movie network that will play movies. One was called First Choice, the other one was called Super Channel, and then they combined and called themselves First Choice Super Channel, and then they can change the name to the Movie Network. Anyways, was watching late night, and this movie came on, and afterwards, Brimstone and Treacle, starring Sting, the lead singer from the Police, Brimstone and Treacle, and those two films are kind of fucked up films. All right, this is pretty fucked up, and so is the other one. This one is kind of like um, Malcolm McDowell is in it, and it's a remake of a film where these people are humans, but they can, like werewolves, but not werewolves. They're cats, like Black Panthers instead of werewolves, and it's like brothers and sisters. So there's incestual things involved in here. And anyways, it was pretty eye-opening of a film, and I went, God, I haven't seen that since the 80s. I'll pick this up because you don't remember the details of it because it's been such a long time. See what I think of it now that I'm in my 50s instead of in my teens or 20s, right? All right. I also found Lady and the Tramp, which is one of the great Disney films. I don't really have to explain this film to you. Um, it has the Blu-ray and the DVD, which I really like, so I'll add this to my Disney Blu-ray collection. All right. Next up is The Hunger Games, the complete four films on DVD. A nice hard box set. I've already put it in the plastic. I'll close it after this video. Um, it's a nice set. I think probably the person got rid of it. I found it for $3. All right, I got rid of it. Maybe they got the Blu-ray version of it, but I don't know. I haven't really. I've watched all the Hunger Games, and I thought they were okay. I didn't think they were great or anything, but like things like this, or let's say the Fast and Furious franchise, or other franchises that I'm not a super huge fan of or anything. I see them used everywhere, right? I could pick up the DVDs or the Blu-rays of the films pretty easily for a pretty reasonable price, but it means if I want to complete the whole series of films, it's going to take up a good amount of space on my shelves, and I don't want to do it. But I would like to have them because they are fun to watch, even the ones that I'm not a super fan of or anything. Um, but if they come in a nice box set and you can only you take up a little bit of space on your shelf, it's better. So now I only have to take up this. So there's four films. Let's say they would take up. If I got them individually, they would take up that much space. But because I got them in a box set, they take up like half that space, right? Um, so that's what I look. So like I have the first Fast and Furious because I really enjoyed that one, but then the second one and Tokyo Drift and this and Fast and Furious and da 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 all the way just continues. I don't know how many movies are they up to now, like 8. Um, if I see a box set of all 8, then I'll pick it up. But I'm not going to pick up the individual movies because it just takes up more and more and more and more space of movies that I like to watch. But it's the first one that I really like watching. The rest of them, not as much. But if you can pick up one film that'll take up this much space, or you can pick up a box set that'll take up maybe a little bit more space, but has, let's say, all 7 or 8 movies in one. Sure, I'll pick it up, put it on my shelf. It'll be something I can visit when I want to, right? So the Hunger Games 4 collection is on DVD, all right? So um, next up is I found The Major and the Minor, all right? And this is directed by Billy Wilder, all right? Stars Ginger Rogers and Ray Milland, all right? I have not watched this film, but Billy Wilder is one of the directors that I collect, all right? And I figure, well, if Billy Wilder did it, it's probably pretty good, all right? And I'll see how it is when I watch it, all right? Next up, there was a gentleman who listed a new for $17, a Studio Ghibli steelbook, and that's a very good price. New, all right, and it's the Tale of Princess Kaguya, all right, and it's one of the. I have a bunch of these steelbooks. I'm collecting all the Studio Ghibli. I think there's 22, 23 films by Studio Ghibli that put out animation, Japanese anime films, and uh, they put most of them out on a nice Blu-ray steelbook, right? And so I found this one for 17 new, all right? And I found a bunch of other ones used for like $2 or $3. I bought like 8 or 9 of them. Um, anyway, so I got maybe 12 now, 12 of the 20 something Studio Ghibli films in steelbook Blu-ray, all right? Um, Next up is Clerks and Clerks 2. Now I have this exact thing in a DVD, so now I can combine the DVD with the Blu-ray and just have the Blu-ray on the shelf. All right, Clerks 2 is extremely funny, and her, all right, I keep forgetting her name. All right, um, I really like watching whatever that she's in. All right, what is her name? Why do I keep forgetting her name? Yeah, Rosario Dawson. Rosario Dawson. She wasn't in Clerks, but she was in Clerks 2 and Clerks 3. But she was also the nurse in most of the Marvel, the Marvel TV shows that came on Netflix. Cage, Iron Fist, Daredevil, those ones. She kind of co-starred in most of those. She was in most of those different TV shows, right? So, and she was in Men in Black. Was it the first one? She was in one of the Men in Black. Anyway, a lot of stuff that she was in, but I really enjoyed her in Clerks 2. Um, it's what made the film for me. The donkey show kind of, when I first watched Clerks 2 when I was much younger, that donkey show was kind of funny. But after you watch Clerks 2 a couple of times, that donkey show kind of starts getting gross. You know what I mean? Anyway, so, but overall, Clerks 2 is funny. Clerks 1 is probably better, but I kind of like Clerks 2 more because of Rosario Dawson, right? Both films are funny. If you like Kevin Smith's sense of humor, you'll like them, right? All right. I also found from my that local used record store. I also found a nice steelbook of The Shining. All right, so that's kind of cool. Um, I have this film on Blu-ray, so I'm just going to replace it. So now is that a disturbing picture of Jack Nicholson, right? Um, so it's a nice steelbook. All right, and if you haven't watched The Shining, it's a really good horror film, more psychological horror than like a gross fest or anything. It's basically about a, a writer. I think he's a writer, anyways. It's in the off season, and he brings his family, his wife and his son, to a hotel. They're going to like house sit the hotel for the winter because it gets all snowed in. So they're in there for like 3 months. They can't leave anywhere because they don't plow out the hotel. So it's like a seasonal hotel, but they need like a caretaker at the hotel for the winter time. So he takes that job, thinking that he can do some writing while he's doing it. But the hotel is kind of haunted, and he starts getting possessed and stuff, and he was wreck the whole thing. But that the axe through the bathroom door where he sticks his head through and goes, "Here's Johnny." like one of the freakiest things I saw growing up when I watched this film, right? So it's a famous scene from Jack Nicholson, right? So, all right, so that's The Shining. All right, next up is the last one. Well, we went through pretty fast, all right, and that is I also found at the used record store for $20 is the limited edition version of Dario Argento's The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. All right, this is Dario Argento's first film. All right, and it's basically like a murder mystery, and there's a twist at the end that is quite interesting. And Dario Argento is considered one of the great Italian genre horror giallo. Is that how you pronounce it? Giallo film directors, right? So um, this came in a nice sturdy box with a nice book of essays and images. All right. And then you have you have some postcards, and you got, I think one's a DVD of the film, and the other one's a Blu-ray of the film, right? Crystal Plumage Blu-ray, and this one is a DVD. Yeah. So you get a DVD Blu-ray combo, which I of course love. All right. So, and that's pretty much everything. Um, so I will put this also in plastic until I pull it out and watch it, right? So to protect it while I have it on the shelf. All right. So I'll close that later. So that's everything that I got in the last week or so. A bunch of books and a bunch of movies. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think. If you liked it, leave a thumbs up. If you want to subscribe, I'd appreciate it. And I will see you in my next video. And let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think The Bird with the Crystal Plumage is a good film? Have you seen it? Do you like Dario Argento? How about The Shining? Did you think that Kubrick film was as good as everybody says it is? Or any other things that you want to comment about? I enjoy comments, all right? And we'll talk to you in the next video. And you have a good day. Bye for now.